Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is June the 15th, 2018. Strong hand, long-term thinking, unconfiscatable. And I really got on that unconfiscatable thing the first time Jorge joined us from Argentina. Jorge is back from Argentina to join us on this very special Friday with some other legends. Ansel Lindner's here, and Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network is in the freaking house, people. So obviously I'm really pumped because I literally just got done running through the hot streets of Florida. Unbelievably hot out there, relatively. So let's start with Jorge, because he is in snowy Argentina now. Yes, it snows in parts of Argentina. And all of us here are very curious about the economic situation in Argentina. We've heard a lot about it in the mainstream news, and we've heard that it's great for Bitcoin, but yet we don't ever see anyone who's actually there. So I'm bringing you a guy who's there. So Jorge, the floor is yours to tell the world, to tell the loyal listeners and watchers what is going on economically in Argentina, what it means for Bitcoin, and what's the scene in Bitcoin in Argentina?
Well, the first thing is Bitcoin is growing very, very strongly in Argentina because of all the things I may, want to explain to you. We've been through situations like we're going now through, like this is the fifth crisis that we've been through. I mean, with some minor crises too. But for instance, here you can see, and I don't know if you can see it, this is a 1 million peso bill of 35 years ago, and this is a 100,000 peso bill of 30 years ago.
Wait, hold it up higher. Hold it up a little higher. Hold it up a little higher.
Like this. I don't know if you can see it. This is a 1 million peso bill of the 80s, and then they chop off a bunch of zeros. And they go back to the new peso. They've done that like 5 times. I think they knocked off like 13 zeros already. And that's going on and on and on. And it's a result of printing money and nothing else. I mean, the problem that Argentina has been having the last 70 years is the fact that the government spends more than it gets. And that started with a sort of a populist government during the Juan Perón time in the 40s. And it has changed the culture, and it has never, reversed. And that is the problem we're facing now. And what we're facing now, I mean, that's good for Bitcoin. That's why there are so many Argentinians that are into Bitcoin, because they have to try to protect themselves from government, from taxation, from government intrusion, from change of they change the rules all the time, and there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of legal uncertainty. So that's why Bitcoin is something that has been widely, I wouldn't say widely, but strongly adopted in Argentina. And a lot of the transactions are person to person, most of them, although there are exchanges too. But if you want for me to sort of explain what the economic situation here in Argentina is, I made a bunch of notes.
Quickly go into the current, because it's not inflationary. Well, describe it. They've raised interest rates a lot. So what does that mean for the average citizen?
Well, they raise interest rates for the citizen not to rush into the dollar and create a hyperinflation situation. And for instance, I was reading an interview to Doug Casey last week, and he thought that there was a good measure that the government did, raising the interest rate, because actually it allows people to save. I mean, if the interest rate is 40% and inflation is 25%, you can make it 15% there. And so that sort of stops people from rushing into dollar bills, which is always traditionally the actual currency in Argentina has been dollar bills. I mean, US dollars. The peso is just a nominal thing to actually pretend that they have independence and their monetary independence, but that's a fiction. That's not true. People think in terms of dollars. Most people think all real estate transactions and everything else are done made in US dollars here in Argentina. And the mistakes, I mean, These people who are running the government right now, Mauricio Macri, who is the president, actually he took office in December of 2015, and they inherited from the very beginning. They did not do a crude and real diagnosis of the catastrophic situation they received from the previous government, the Kirchner regime. During the 12 years of the Kirchner regime, they went from having what is called twin surpluses here in Argentina, which is fiscal surplus plus foreign trade surplus, to a 5% deficit. And they had the best trading conditions price-wise in 200 years. And taxation pressure was one of the highest in the world. They had a huge, insane sales retention, the Kirchner regime, on agricultural exports as well as mining exports and oil exports. Like, for instance, 35% direct off the top on soybeans, 20% on wheat and corn, and all of these things. They stole all of these things for themselves. So that is what they actually inherited, and they should have actually made that public to start with. And the second mistake is having opted for what they call a gradualist method of corrections, which we have had several times before, and it has never been successful in Argentina in the history of Argentina.
Are you saying that that the medicine that you guys need to take, it's not being directly applied right now? It's a gradual solution. That whatever solution is going to be, it's going to be very painful. I mean, they're going to have to raise interest rates quite a bit. The average Argentine is going to notice this. I like how you said that people value their wealth in dollars there, which means I think they're ready to value their wealth in Bitcoin.
That's exactly right. That's absolutely right. That's the switch from valuing in dollars onto valuing in Bitcoin terms is a nothing thing. You know, they just immediately are doing that. And then there's, for instance, the idiosyncrasy of the average Argentine is most people are what we call deniers. We call them negadores, inclined to think that the state has to take care and look after all their needs without the least amount of effort or sacrifice from their part, of the people who receive these benefits. The present government has utilized some of the very few things, if not the only one, that the Kirchner regime did not destroy, the possibility of acquiring debt. But in 2 years, this present government, not only did they get deeply into debt, but also the world changed. You know, now the interest rate is going up. Interest rate starts rising, and the emerging countries start having problems acquiring debt, especially Argentina. And presently, now they can't get any external credit, and it's impossible to raise taxes more. So there was no choice but to end up in the IMF. They should have done this on December of 2015. They wasted 2.5 years, either because they weren't able to do it, or they didn't know, or they didn't want to do it, or they didn't know how to do it. So they will have to do it now, actually forced by Christine Lagarde, the IMF. The total amount outlay from the IMF reaches $50 billion, which is a record in the history of IMF, since it's 11 times the quota for a country, in this case Argentina, 11 times. Starting out with a 13 billion with a quarterly 3-month follow-up on the guidelines that are committed. The term for the loan is 4 years. Therefore, it will exceed Mauricio Macri's, the presidential term, and it involves the next administration that could either be Macri himself or someone in the opposition. If the opposition is halfway reasonable, they'll find that this agreement is convenient also to them, since it sort of ensures governance for 2 more years. And most importantly, the fact that during 2018 and 2019, all the major fixes and adjustments to eliminate the deficit, which is the cancer that is eating us up, will have been made. This is doable since Duhovne, who is Ministry of Economy here in Argentina, was already doing this and was already reducing the deficit 2.7% in 2018 and 1.5 to 1.7% for 2019. During this year, 2018, the country lost $8 billion in income due to a major drought. In 2019, and better prices, the income could reach $9 US. This is of help too. The fundamental thing to understand the situation, after 70 years of failures, mistakes, or miscalculation, the real currency in Argentina is the US dollar, as I said before. All asset transactions, savings, they're all in terms of US dollars. The peso is just nominal, to the only effect of pretending an absurd monetary independence. Mauricio Macri, needs to stop thinking of his re-election. The only way he has to go down in history is making the adjustments. And all that, yeah.
Let me ask you about him, because I mean, obviously, huge. Is this government? But after my question, I know the other guys have some questions. And one guy has sent a question in the chat, and I'll get to that. Is he? Cristina Fernandez? I mean, she was a strong-handed control freak, I would say, and I wouldn't. Yeah. I would think she'd be a person to crack down on Bitcoin. Is he going to ignore Bitcoin? Does he have bigger things to worry about? Do you think this present government will try to do anything with Bitcoin, or will you guys be free to do what you want to do with the Bitcoin?
No. I think the good news is that Bitcoin is totally legal in Argentina, and this year it started to become what they call a digital money. Before, until December of last year, was just, I don't know how to explain it, a thing. You just declare that you had Bitcoin like you declare you have a chair or furniture or something like that. It wasn't anything. It wasn't an asset. It wasn't a security. It wasn't now it is considered digital money, and eventually they may want to tax it, but it's totally legal. You can have Bitcoin. There are exchanges. There are transactions. There are all kinds of transactions. I think personally that most of the transactions made on Bitcoin are person to person, because Argentinians, after 70 years of trying to fight the government and to hide their money from the government, have developed skills to hide the money, and they rather have the government not know what they have than know what they have. And so Bitcoin is a very good. Everybody has had accounts in Uruguay and other countries and all that, to actually protect their
wealth,
their belongings.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is a very, very good tool to accomplish that. There's also exchanges, so you can link your bank account to the exchange account and buy Bitcoin online too. But a lot of people do that. But most of the market is a spontaneous market.
Now, Ansel or Thomas, do you have any questions for Jorge?
Thomas, you can go first if you want.
All right, let's see. Well, I wrote down some notes. I just think this is a great thing. This is what Bitcoin's for. People often say, why can't I buy my coffee with Bitcoin? Why is it not faster? All these kind of things. And we say censorship resistance, people in other countries. And here we actually have a person from another country. Their currency is bad, and they have another option now. That's what I think is really exciting. Previously, like you said, they were using the dollar, similar to Ecuador, that just uses the dollar defaultly. And now they have this other option, this Bitcoin. And it reminds me of the Cyprus event in 2013, when the Cyprus bank started seizing the people's money. The people realized that holding money in a bank was a bad idea, and they started pulling their money out, and they started buying Bitcoin. And just as for a question, basically just commenting on the skills to hide money. We have people here that say, if I'm not doing anything wrong, what does it matter? Is that a common attitude in Argentina, or do people not trust the government, not trust the banks more by default?
It doesn't matter. I mean, no, it's not the way the mindset that people in Argentina have. My mindset is I don't care if I have something to hide or not. You know, nobody has a right to ask me what I have, why I have, where I got it from, or anything. That's not a right that nobody, including government, has, and that's it. Period. And here, people actually value that concept so much that it's a principle. It's not just a strategy. It is a principle.
I feel that way about privacy. A lot of people say they don't need privacy or it's not important to them. But when you miss privacy, when it's gone, then you realize how important it was and what a basic part of being human it is. And it's not just that I have something to hide, it's that I want my privacy.
Well, of course. I mean, you start realizing how important privacy is when you don't want, you know, anybody else, including the government, but anybody else, to actually steal from you or try to break into your house or something like that. You know, the moment anybody knows that you have something, you're at risk. So people understand here that it's not just because they are afraid of the government seizing their funds, which they have done so in, for instance, 2001. That was terrible what they did. And but because of the principle, fundamentally, that nobody has any right to, you don't have the obligation. You are not forced to declare or confess what your home. When you do that, the only purpose for anybody else to know what you have is to take it away from you. There's no other purpose. No matter what they say or what they claim, the only purpose is to take it away from you. Otherwise, they shouldn't have to ask you. That's my take.
Sure. I've got just one more question, and then I'll throw it over to Ansel. You mentioned that Bitcoin is illegal, and I was wondering, did they make a specific law saying Bitcoin is illegal, or is it more like India, where
No.
anything that there isn't a law permitting is by default illegal?
He said it's legal.
No.
Oh,
I said it.
Great.
Yeah, it's legal. I mean, Thomas, it is legal. I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, they made it legal. I mean, they didn't even. There was no arguments. I mean, all of a sudden they just.
Is there an official statement from the current government saying it is legal, or is it just up in the air? Or did they say this? Because sometimes it's legal by default because they didn't say it was illegal. But has the current government made a statement on it?
Yeah, they have. They have made a statement on that. They made it legal in writing, and they published it.
Awesome.
Well, that's really good. That's surprising they'd invite that competition in. I'd be worried about that if I was running a central bank and printing money.
Well, I personally think that a lot of the people in the government own Bitcoin. So I think that may be one of the reasons why they did that. But I mean, before that, I remember last year they actually didn't give Bitcoin any category of anything. It was just a thing that you could declare on your belongings. The one thing you never know in this country is how they are going to tax you next year, because they change all the time. So a lot of people are, you know, some of the people would like to go and declare that they do have Bitcoin. Other people don't know what to do, because now they will come up with a set of rules, and next year they're going to change them. You know, that's been happening for all my life. I mean, for 70 years or 80 years in this country. So you never know whether you better declare what you have or you don't. And a lot of people are inclined not to declare what they have, because it creates it becomes vulnerable to any eventual new laws or regulation.
I definitely would not declare, because eventually I think the 80%ers in your country will elect a person like Cristina Fernandez again, and it's just the whole thing will get restarted. This regime economically is much better than the previous one, but unfortunately, I mean, you guys have a history of defaulting back to the Cristinas of the world. So we'll see what I mean. That's the whole thing about Bitcoin. It's you're not supposed to declare it.
Let me tell you, Adam. For instance, I mean, reading Doug Casey's interview last week, and he actually, I agree with him. He says Macri impresses me as an okay guy, probably the most decent head of any major state in the world today. And he says that, and I agree with him. I mean, he's a good guy. I mean, I wouldn't say, I would take it back. I say he's a decent guy. He's not an active criminal. The ones we had before were indeed active criminals. I mean, that's what they were. So, yeah. And actually, he doesn't get it. I think he has had his philosophy wrong. He's been surrounded by Keynesians, and the first measures he took were not, he didn't do the adjustments he needed to do when he started off. I mean, and it's very simple. I mean, Argentina is not viable because taxation is extremely high. If you put everything together, if you combine all the taxes, it goes up to between 70 and 75%.
Oh my God!
So you're out of 12 months. The normal people are working 9 months for the government and 3 months for themselves and their families. So they are forced to cheat or to avoid taxes or to declare, or to just make up statements and things like that, because it's the only way they can survive. And so
now is the time.
And that is a result of a gigantic government, and I have here some notes of.
Now is the time for the people to turn their pesos into Bitcoin. Seriously, dude. Seriously, Argentines. This.
I didn't understand your question now.
No. I was just saying now's the time I was saying that if you're in Argentina, time to change pesos into Bitcoin. It's time. It's definitely time. So wait, Ansel, you got a question?
Yeah, I have a question, but I wanted to have a few stats up here up front. This Argentina yesterday, the exchange rate between the dollar and the Argentine peso went down 10%. So it's happening very, very quickly. So it went from 25 pesos per dollar yesterday to 27.5 pesos in one day, which is pretty amazing. But it's not just in Argentina. A lot of places around the country that their currencies are really weak have been raising interest rates because the Fed is cutting back on their balance sheet. They're sucking the dollars out of these emerging markets. India and Indonesia specifically have had surprise rate hikes in the last, I think, 1 or 2 weeks. So this is happening all over the place. This is what happens when we let bankers run, the world. We give our money over to the bankers, and they're going to use it against us. My question is for Jorge. Nice to meet you, by the way, Jorge. Thanks for coming on. This is interesting. So this is a fifth crisis, you said, in 70 years. I'm aware of some previous ones. I was wondering, since it's so repetitive, during any periods of stability, are there things that people do to prepare? Like, I know you said they hold a lot of their money in US dollars. Is there anything else that they do? And second part of the question is, can people kind of tell by the rhetoric when these type of policies are going to get really bad? And, what does it sound like from the government so we know what to look out for?
Well, in the past, the first answer would be people just hold dollars, or people have been opening accounts in foreign countries where they could protect their funds, which before it was legal, and then they made it illegal, but they still had to do that. People buy real estate, and that is one of the things they do. They try to get rid of the peso as fast as they can, because the peso becomes devalued and so it's either dollars, whether in the country or outside the country. It's either real estate and not much more. And the other question, not much more. So people suffer of that. Some people are not able. I mean, the working class is not able to actually have their money in a foreign account because they don't have the knowledge in order to do that. That is a problem. So the middle class and the upper class, they do. they have been able to do that. And the other question is whether people, for instance, the first major collapse that I witnessed, it was in 1975. It got everybody off guard, and nobody was expecting it. And the second one was in 82. Again, it got everybody off guard, and so people suffered. The third one was in 89, hyperinflation, big time, you know, and this is when these things happened, you know, the 1 million, the 1 million peso bill and things like that. Again, it got everybody off guard. I mean, now people are very sensitive. The one in 2001, I remember that when there was the President President de la Rua resigned and was replaced by Duhalde. Duhalde said that because people here, that's one of the other things, you can have a bank account in terms of Argentine pesos, but you can also have a bank account with dollars. Now, the difference is that the Argentine government does not print dollars. They can print pesos, but not dollars. So if they run out of, if the central bank runs out of dollars, those dollars that you're supposed to have in your account in dollars are not backed by anything. So in 2001, President Duhalde, in spite of saying on TV that those who had dollars would get dollars, what the next thing he did, he turned the dollars into pesos. Back then, it was back to the dollar 1-to-1 artificially, because the distortion had been enough that it wasn't 1-to-1, or it shouldn't have to be 1-to-1. So he actually, for those who had dollars, he said, now those who have dollars now have pesos, 1-to-1. So we have $1,000, now you have 1,000 pesos. Next thing he did, he devalued the peso. So now the dollar is $4. I mean, the $1 equals 4 pesos back then in 2001. So if you had $1,000, now you have $250, and that happened in 2001. And actually, the deposits were already frozen, so you couldn't withdraw that money, even the pesos that you had, to run off and buy dollars in the black market or something like that, at gold. I mean, Kirchner also banned gold. For instance, just I'm changing subjects. The Kirchner presidency was after 2003. So we've been through situations like that back and again all the time. I mean, not to the point for the country to become like Venezuela right now, because Adam's been here shortly. I mean, a bunch of months ago, and you know, it looks like normal, and and Argentinians are used to these things. And but they now are very sensitive to the situation, because they've been 4 times. This would be the 5th one, and now they are very sensitive of because they can remember very, very clearly what happened in 2001, and they are afraid of that situation coming back. And that's why I think this government has had to end up dealing with the IMF.
Well, I'll say this, with that history that you just told, I don't see how any person in Argentina, I mean, that knows about Bitcoin isn't buying Bitcoin at this point. I mean, it's definitely worth the risk, because it isn't much of a risk compared to the risk of holding the peso. And I want to add, when the Argentines, the smart ones, were buying real estate, there's a domino effect, because a lot of them would buy condos out in Montevideo in Uruguay, and it drives up the prices of condos there, so the people in Uruguay can't afford it. I've heard all sorts of different things. I have a question. I know, Ansel, you might have a follow-up, but one real quick thing, because Vention MGTOW sent a $5 super chat. He's got a question. He said, Jorge, I remember that they seized retirement accounts about 10 years back. I think he probably means like 2001. Yeah. What effect did that have? Do people still have such vulnerable accounts now? That's a good question in terms of retirement accounts.
Well, they actually didn't confiscate accounts. They nationalized. Yeah, they took all the retirement was private back until 2008. and all of a sudden they nationalized it and took all the funds. And of course, if you want to retire, now the state is going to pay you pay the retirement to you, and not the any private entity. That's what they did. That was Nestor Kirchner Christina. It was 2008. Christina Fernandez de Kirchner did in 2008. Yeah, I was in Norway fishing for salmon when that happened.
All right. So now those old style so it's all government. Retirement accounts are still controlled by the government completely. Your retirement is with the government.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Lovely. That's lovely.
100%.
All right, Ansel, did you have any other questions for Jorge?
Nope, I don't. Thanks.
All right, dudes. Well, there you go, people. That is the update from Argentina. And what's going on there, how it relates to Bitcoin. I think everyone can see, when people say, oh, there's no use case for Bitcoin, we'll tell them to watch the first half hour of this show, okay? Seriously, I mean, King of the Trolls and all those dudes should be watching this. Okay, so now we're going to move on to, speaking of governments, the SEC has said, is talking securities. What's a security? What's not a security? Well, Ethereum and Bitcoin are not securities. Well, we all knew Bitcoin wasn't. The Ethereum thing, some people were shocked about. And a lot of ICOs are securities. So, Thomas, what's going on with this stuff? Elaborate. Tell us what's your opinion. What's going on?
Well, basically, we talked about both sides of this for years. We would say that Ethereum had a crowd sale. They had no product. They had no code. And they had a countdown timer. And if you invested in that countdown timer, you're a millionaire now. So congratulations. But for everyone else who said, there's nothing here, this is probably a security, and a security is a stock. It's something you sell to build a company. They sold Ether to build their company. Then they built their company. It was strange to see the SEC say that there's no central figure when we all know Vitalik Buterin's the central figure of Ethereum, and that there's no central company when there's the Ethereum Foundation, which was given a lot of Ethereum. What the FBI said, the SEC, what they said yesterday was that at this time, we don't think that there's any value to seeing Ether as a security. They're kind of saying that maybe you broke the law years ago, but now you're too big to fail, and we're not going to go after you because it's too difficult, or maybe they don't even know how to go after them. But what I find is this puts them in a hard position considering all the other ICOs. I don't see how all the other ICOs are different from Ethereum. I don't see how they're not securities now too. It seems like the SEC just gave up their entire job, what they're supposed to do, regulating industries like this. And everyone that said, oh, it's a security, the law will come through, was wrong. Everyone who said, do what you want, break the law, do what you want, go ahead, they are winners now. So this is a very strange thing for the law to do. I saw some great tweets by John Carvalho, Bitcoin Error Log. He also runs or works for that site, exotica.tv. And they very easily could have done one of these ICOs. They could have done a crowdfund. And he talks that he chose not to. He thought it was illegal. He thought they'd come to get him. And he followed the law. And now we have a situation where he's punished. And other people who had no project, no code, just a countdown timer, raised millions of dollars. And now it seems that there is no law and you can break the law at will. So I think it's a very, very strange decision by the SEC, even seeing lots of crypto people celebrate it. And Barry Silbert, DCG, put out a tweet where he said, the entire crypto community is breathing a sigh of relief. And the only reason you do that is if you were uncertain about your position in the law, or if you've been breaking the law and you just got a get out of jail free card. So it's an absolutely shocking decision, as much as I know people are very happy about it, the Ethereum people and others. So.
Wow. I love what Thomas just said. Ethereum too big to fail. Just like, I mean, wow. Pound that like button, people, if you realize Adam had forgotten to say that yet. All right. So, Ansel, you obviously have a follow-up to that.
Yeah. So, first off, Thomas, you said that this is a strange thing for government to do. I don't think so. I think government is generally incompetent and that they made this huge mistake, whether it's good or bad. I mean, it's a mistake of incompetence. So I don't think it's very strange. Now, I don't support anything the SEC does. So I don't care if they would have said it was a security or it wasn't a security. My big fight is to say that the SEC should not even exist, right? Like, who cares? Who cares what the SEC says? If you are decentralized, if they're decentralized, like the SEC said, Ethereum is decentralized. If they're decentralized and censorship resistant, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter if they say Bitcoin is a security, because Bitcoin is just going to laugh at them, right? And they can't say that, though, because everyone will laugh at the SEC, and the SEC can't stand that. They can't have everybody laughing at them, because then nobody would listen to anything they say, right? So they can't regulate these things because they're impotent anyway. Let's see. I think it's a false dichotomy. It's not whether they will regulate it or not regulate it. There's a third choice. There's many choices. One would be make Ethereum truly decentralized and censorship resistant. Another option would be that the SEC could say, we're clueless. We don't know, so we're not going to do anything. That's another option. Another option would be to say, or for the SEC to just shut up about it. Just not say anything. We don't care what they say. So being happy about some person in the ruling class saying that what I did was okay. I just think that we're looking at this from the wrong angle, and I don't really care what the government says.
I want to add, I was going to read this tweet off, and amazingly, Ansel just conveyed this thought, but I'm going to read it anyway. Matt Odell said, if a government classified Bitcoin as a security, it wouldn't matter. That's the point. So that I mean, Ansel basically just said that. Before Thomas has his rebuttal, because I know he's got some more things to say, I want to segue into Jorge. You just heard about Ansel doesn't care what the government has to say. I think what do you think about government's state? I mean, what do you think about this? I mean, because you're not a big fan of governments.
No, you know that. No, especially if you have lived in Argentina, you cannot be a fan of governments. I mean, if you want to learn about the nature of government, just spend some years in Argentina and you will. I don't care what they do, what they say, personally, and people seem not to care. I mean, I can see that, especially young people. Most of the Bitcoiners here in Argentina, or the people who are into crypto, are young people. I have never met anybody who's older than me, and they don't care. They just don't care. But like they didn't care when they had to hide their money in foreign countries, foreign accounts, or they don't care, because they are risking their lives, they're risking their families, they're risking their future, and they don't care. I personally don't care what they. But the good news is that they have made it legal, and there hasn't been any argument or anything. It's that is a very, very good thing, because that enables a lot of the people who are not into the Bitcoin space to consider entering the Bitcoin space. The fact that it is legal here.
All right. Now I want to go back to Thomas. Ansel said a lot of things. You probably have some follow-up thoughts to what he was saying.
All right. I'm going to disagree with some of the things Ansel said. I'm going to start out. He said, if Bitcoin is a security, no one cares. And I agree with this, and it's because of the fundamental parts of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was created by an anonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who he is. Bitcoin was created in a pretty fair way. If you were there on day one and you volunteered to mine, you're in. Hal Finney, Matthias, a couple of other early people mined early. Those are the people who benefited from the early knowledge. It wasn't a crowd sale. There wasn't an announcement. There wasn't a pre-amount of Bitcoins that Satoshi held that he's now spending. There is an early pre-mine, but it's held there. It hasn't moved. But I'd contrast that with Ethereum. If Ethereum is not a security, if Ethereum is a security, what are the problems? Well, you got this centralized control with Vitalik Buterin, the creator. He's already rolled back the chain once. which is changing the outcomes, making it immutable. Your transactions that you sent are sent back. People who hacked money, they took the money away from them. And they've talked about fixing it again several times to fix other smart contracts that are broken, other large amounts of money that are losses. They've even talked about having a process for applying to roll back the chain, judging whose application is valid, and having even an automated or a regular programmable system that would allow you to roll back the chain. So if Ethereum was a security, you could shut down Vitalik, you could shut down the Ethereum Foundation, and you could shut down this whole chain rolling back thing, or you could force it, or you could make it a government function or something. So Ethereum has a lot to lose by being labeled a security. So I think it is an important announcement. If it happened to Bitcoin, I agree it's not important, but that's the differences between these two projects. And this leads into a great tweet that I saw by Kevin Pham, where Kevin said, now you can say without a doubt that Ethereum is a government-sponsored attack on Bitcoin. Ethereum is backed by the corporations. Ethereum is backed by IBM. Ethereum is now have government support saying that they're not a security. At the same time, the government's saying all these other ICOs that did the exact same thing are securities. So now we have a government-backed challenger against Bitcoin, the anonymous, pseudo-anonymous currency, right? And you may not care what the government says, and that's fine, but you better care what the government does. And the government is now siding with Ethereum over Bitcoin. So going back to the SEC and that they shouldn't do anything, we have a basic disagreement of principles there. The SEC is designed to protect people from scams. I think that's a good purpose. I think when they do act to shut down scams, they are protecting people and they are trying to help. Ansel probably has more of a government should have hands off, let people fail, let people lose their money. And maybe that's what they're doing today. Maybe they're going to let all these people fail. But it really does seem more like Ethereum was a crowd sale. It was a security. They had a countdown timer. They sold stock to build a company. They built a company. Now they have a company. I disagree with the SEC. I think they should have acted sooner, which is what we said in the time period before this ICO madness started breaking out. We said, where is the SEC? Where are the people who are paid to monitor these markets? We needed warnings. We needed threats. We needed a crackdown. As much as everyone's against regulation, and you can get all mad in the comments, regulation helps protect people sometimes. And we can disagree on the variances of that. But I think they should have acted sooner. They waited too long. It is kind of too big to fail, but I don't know how they're going to have a leg to stand on with any of these ICOs. If I was an attorney defending an ICO, I would say Ethereum had a crowd sale. They had no product. They had no code. They had a countdown timer. They built a company. They paid all these people. We know who all of them are. We know where they are. We know who the Ethereum Foundation is. They have a physical location. You go knock on it and you serve them papers. If you could do that to Satoshi Nakamoto, they would, but they can't. That's the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin. And that's why this matters so much. The government has taken a side in this battle.
Wow. I will say this. You said this might be a backdoor way for ICOs to win in court. I mean, and say, well, if Ethereum can do it, but you say we can't do it, that's not fair. That's interesting if they've got good lawyers. Ansel, what were you about to say?
Yeah, Thomas.
Me?
No,
Thomas, no, Thomas, all the respect, man. I respect the hell out of you. So this is just a small little disagreement. I think that you said if it was a security, they could do XYZ to Ethereum. Well, they can do that anyway. They don't have to call it a security. That's arbitrary. Tomorrow they could go and say, well, we learned something new and now it's a security, right? So the problem is that we give the government this power to be arbitrary over us. Not that that it's a win. It's not a win. The win would be if the SEC said nothing. That would be a win. So we just got to fight their arbitrary power.
Thomas, did you have thoughts on that, Thomas? You hear me, man?
Is he frozen?
Yeah. Is Thomas? He looks like he's frozen.
Uh-oh,
man. Well, here I'll ask. I'll bring up something I wanted to bring. He'll come back. I'll bring up something that is very interesting. Had the SEC? There he is. Thomas.
So sorry about Ansel. I lost my connection there. I didn't get to hear what you said. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying that we need to fight the arbitrary nature of this, because you said that if it was a security, the government could do X, Y, Z. Well, the government can do that anyway. Tomorrow they could come out and say it is a security because they learned something new. So, you know, that by supporting anything the government does, you kind of validate the arbitrary nature of their power over you.
I would agree. They are being arbitrary in this case. But I'm asking them to follow the laws. If they have laws saying this is a security because it does this, then the inspector should come in and say, this is a security because it does this. When they break from the laws, which is a human failing versus a law which is written down, which is pretty simple, or we disagree with the language or things, but it's a human failing. And I think it's because this market got too big. And I agree they could change their mind. It's not an official decision, but they are trending this way. They are headed this way. And if you look at the people who are celebrating in the street today, it's not the libertarians or the cypherpunks or the Bitcoiners. It's these big money Wall Street people who were riding the line there. They were like, we don't know if this is legal. We're going to make $1 million. You know, that after we get $1 million, we'll get the lawyers. We'll find out if it's legal. And that's the difference between, you know, someone like myself or John Carvalho, who did not do an ICO, who could have done an ICO, made a choice. No, I don't want to print my own money. I'm into this to stop money printing. And now all the money printers are rewarded. I agree with Adam. I think the ICOs are totally legal now. I think the SEC made a huge mistake. If Ethereum is legal, the ICOs are legal. It's not my choice or my opinion. It's what the government seems to be telling me. So,
yeah. If you got a good lawyer, I think that's what they're going to bring up. Thomas, I do want to ask you a question, though. If they said yesterday that it was that Ethereum was a security, what would happen to the crypto market? I think that's why a lot of people are celebrating, because the crypto market did not crash. If they said Ethereum was a security, I mean, there would have been Ethereum would have crashed at least, but it would have brought down a lot of other things too. So, I mean, do you agree with that?
The sky would have fallen, but perhaps that would have been good, right? And I know we're talking about creative destruction here, and some people don't like that, but I've been hanging out with JW Weatherman recently, and he keeps talking about all the dumb money in this space, and that they need to be run out. And after the DAO collapsed and got hacked because they wrote bad code, they should have gotten hacked and stayed hacked. Yeah. Rolling back that chain allowed this next level of madness. And once again, the SEC as an enforcer, as a regulator, is supposed to regulate this market and keep the madness out. They had a chance after the DAO. They could have stepped in and said, no, you lost your money. Don't just roll it back. And this is insane. You're a security times 10 now. You're repaying people. You're controlling, like, who's the centralized figure? It was so funny yesterday. He said in that article, he's like, there's no centralized figure behind Ethereum. Who do you think rolled back the chain? Like, who do you think made this decision? And I'm not saying it was Vitalik alone. He has a group of people he works with. They have an Ethereum foundation, which they empowered with the money that they raised from this illegal security sale. Like, do your job, government. Like, be critical of the government, be critical of the laws or the rules or how they're written. But if we've agreed that we're going to have this regulation, you can't print stocks, you have to follow rules, we should have that regulation. It shouldn't be up for this guy to say, at this time, it's just too big and it's too difficult. No, do your job.
All right. Any thoughts, guys, on this before we sum it all up, rest of the panel?
Well, I just wanted to make clear that I don't want Ethereum to be a security or to be classified as a security. I think it is under the rules, it is a security, but I don't want it to be classified as security. I don't want it to not be classified as a security, right? And I had a conversation with Bruce Fenton on Twitter yesterday. You know, he thought, since I said the SEC made a mistake, he's saying that I wanted it to be a security. No, I just want the SEC to dissolve. That's it.
I want the SEC to dissolve also. I'll say that. Jorge, any thoughts? Any thoughts on those crazy Americans in the SEC?
Well, that doesn't apply here. We have different rules here, but I agree with Ansel. You know, I prefer the SEC to disappear. You know, and I don't care I wouldn't care what they say, but that's me. You know.
All right, so we're going to talk about another source of well, that was a potential source of FUD, but now let's talk about the Tether situation. Ansel, do you want to give us the latest? The mainstream media earlier this week picked up. They finally found out about this Tether thing. that, oh, it might have pumped up the price of Bitcoin, even though there were FUDsters talking about it months and months ago. Now the mainstream media decided to talk about Tether some, and it brought the price of Bitcoin down in terms of dollars. Again, value your wealth in Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what it's worth in dollars. Think long term. Pound that like button. Check out these guys' links below. All right, sorry. So Ansel, what's going on with Tether?
Well, I don't think the Tether FUD this time around brought the price down very much. I think we're just in a really soft, weak market right now. So the price is moving right. It's going sideways. That's what I've been saying on my show for multiple months now, is we're just in a sideways market, consolidation period. But I've been a staunch opponent to this Tether FUD from the beginning. When other people were having Bitfinex on their show and giving him the mic, I was like, what the heck are you doing? Right? You're just perpetuating this FUD. And now, like, we wouldn't even have this in the mainstream media if those early shows hadn't perpetuated this whole narrative in the first place. Right? So be careful about where you're getting your information from. The next thing I have here is that it's pure projection from the mainstream media, right? Because the dollar is what's pumped. The dollar is what is printed out of nowhere and used to pump up the stock market, bond market. Everything is pumped up from the US dollar, at least in the United States, and it causes problems everywhere. So this is just projection from the mainstream media saying that, look, they're printing Tether, which is making Bitcoin go up, but they won't admit that the reason why the stock market is going up is because they're printing US dollars. So I think slowly but surely that realization will sink into people.
What did you think about this report that they glorified? I mean, that the mainstream medias were that they were picking up on. That's what they kept. That was their crutch. They're like, there's a report that says, it's a formal report that says Tether pumped up the price of Bitcoin during the pump earlier in late last year.
Well, I didn't read the whole thing. I noticed that people were talking about multiple, factual errors in there. So it's just they can make anything. What is it? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. So they can just make anything look true. It's FUD.
Yeah. Thomas, what are your thoughts?
Sure, I would agree with Ansel. I'd say you can prove anything with statistics. 99% of all people know that. So, and we are going sideways. We're going sideways down, though. I didn't really think this report was FUD. I definitely covered the Bitfinex Tether story 6 months ago or whatever. I covered the debt story, Bitfinex going into debt, printing their own token, buying back the debt after they got hacked. Very questionable start to this whole story. Then they start printing the Tether. And from the specific report, they said that they used the Tether on linked markets to buy altcoins. So you'd have a pump in EOS or Ethereum or Litecoin or whatever. After it pumped, everybody's buying in. They're all excited. They sell on the people that are pumping, get the Bitcoin, trade the Bitcoin for USD, put the USD back into Tether, and do it again. So we have some pretty convincing ways to do it. If you look at the 66-page research paper presented by the University of Texas, they analyzed the blockchain. So they watched the money moving out and from Bitfinex, and they were able to see this circle of money going around. So that's a factual evidence. I don't know how you're going to defeat that. And I've been against Tether the whole time. They allegedly were holding this money in a bank account. So if you held it one Tether, they'd have $1 for you in a bank account. And anybody who's paying attention knows that's the same as gold certificates. And they always print more gold certificates than they have gold. They never link up right. Tether's much the same way. They kept printing this money. They kept driving up the price. One good thing I'd say, when they were at the top, they kept printing as well to try to keep the price up. The other side to this, and why I think it's not just a one-day story and that this will be a bigger story and that the media will keep covering it, is we don't know who benefited yet. We know a lot of strange facts. And there's another article out there on Medium. Let me get the title. It's something about Bitcoin and a cartel. And it says, Uncovering the Real Cartel in Bitcoin. And I'm going to agree with you. This is a conspiracy-filled article. It's not well written. It's way too long. But he basically implicates several of the major players, the people who own exchanges, the people who invested in every company, and that they're at the top of this thing making a boatload of money. And if you know these people, would they be against making a boatload of money? No. Do they necessarily believe in government regulations or money laundering? No. So I think we've got a real problem. I think they drove up the price of Bitcoin. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I think it's the world's money. I just don't know when. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. If you were institutional money and you saw this market be so easily manipulated, would you put your institutional money in? I'm afraid that maybe if you're going to do it in 2 years, now you're going to do it in 5. Now you're going to do it in 10. So I'm afraid of the chart. We're in a downtrend, the chart people say. I'm afraid of the news. And basically, whereas before I would say, well, Bitcoin was once 20K, so it'll always be 20K is what I said when it was 1,200, when it went down to 300. But then we found that was fake too, with the Mt. Gox and the Willy bots. So we need more demand. We need more people buying Bitcoin, getting into Bitcoin. If we don't, they're going to keep printing new Bitcoins every day. People are going to keep not buying them. The price is going to keep going down. So I don't think it's FUD. I hate to be negative. I hate to be bearish. I'm trying to be honest here, and that's the way I take this report in this situation.
Well, the crux of that, the important piece is not the Tether, right? The important piece is the altcoins. So you shouldn't blame Tether. Tether is 1-to-1, and there's been multiple. I mean, you can say that it's not 1-to-1.
They did stop. They stopped auditing Tether. One of the major stories in the FUD run up, or whatever you want to call it, is they stopped auditing. So I don't know that it's 1-to-1.
Correct, but look at the exchanges. Like, you know, some of the big quote unquote stakeholders in Tether are Poloniex and Bittrex and all these guys that are using Tether. So if my exchange was going to be using Tether, I would want to audit it myself at least. So there's got to be some sort of oversight over that. It can't be pure fluff. Where these altcoins are the pure inflation piece, not the Tether. The altcoins need to get all the blame, not Tether.
I don't know. I mean, if you were in on it, you wouldn't need to audit it. You'd know it's a scam. You'd get paid from the scam. So who cares about auditing a scam that's working for you? You don't need to fix a fixed fight, right?
Collusion always breaks down. So you can't trust that. And people in Bitcoin know that. So if I were Poloniex running that, I wouldn't, or Bittrex, whatever, I wouldn't trust like some guy at Bitfinex to not stab me in the back. I would make sure it's there.
Well, I think that's where we are right now with the story. We believe there might have been manipulation because of the blockchain evidence, but on the other side, who did it, who benefited, and which one of them is going to crack first, which one's going to rat out the other ones, try to get a better deal. Are they going to expand this investigation? I hate to say it, but from a mainstream media perspective, and I agree, it's all hype, it's all BS, Bitcoin's the truth. The code is good. Lightning Network's awesome. I'm with you guys. But from a mainstream media perspective, this is a multi-day story. It's important because it's about Bitcoin. It's about lots of money. It's about criminals, people stealing this money, manipulating markets. It's salacious, right? And here's a headline from The Express. And this is a UK tabloid, totally a tabloid, I'm telling you. But here's the headline. And it has lots of all caps in it. It says, "Proof Bitcoin fever was a scam. Report claims crypto price was manipulated." So that's just day one. Day two is big people at exchanges manipulated the price. So-and-so is a big hero of Bitcoin, but he's manipulated the price. They ratted them out. They're going to jail. They get lawyers. All of this, it has to unfold. So I just think it's a multi-day story. We're in it now. You've got to make your choices if you're going to buy or sell. If you have enough money for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years, you're good. You got a good job. You're investing dollar cost averaging, not more than you can afford to lose. You're good. But if you don't have 6 months, if you don't have a year, you need to make some moves. You need to protect yourself. I love holding. I like doing it, but you have to have enough money for rent and food. So,
yeah, I think. Sorry, Adam. Can I say one more thing? Yeah, it might scare away some retail investors because they believe everything they read in the tabloids on the tabloid headlines. But for the institutional investors, they're not going to see that headline and give it any weight whatsoever. So the investors that count for this price are the ones that are going to be able to see through this narrative, this FUD.
I've got two things to say in it. First of all, I'm in touch with a lot of people who in foreign countries who want a bunch of Bitcoin. They can't get it. They cannot get you know, on one end we have this mainstream fear, I guess, but I think on the ground reality is no one is selling their Bitcoin. People, in theory, if this is true, people should be scared out of their pants. Oh, I'll sell it. I'll sell. You know, just like Thomas said, some people have to pay their bills. Well, there are not enough of those people out there for people to get large amounts right now. I would just say that, and to reassure everyone out there, I know it's not the exact same subject, but it deals with this subject. I mean, there's anyway. The other thing I wanted to say was we're talking. Did this story, Thomas? Did this story mention that Poloniex is a player in all this? Is Poloniex being accused here in this Bitcoin as playing around in this?
Let's see. He's got in addition, he says Poloniex, CoinDesk, and other parties appear to be peripherally involved.
Okay, well,
he does say the main ones for him, and I'm not accusing these people. I'm not saying they're guilty of anything. This is allegedly. This is not a great article, but he says Bitfinex, Tether, Kraken, Barry Silbert, Roger Ver, Eric Voorhees, the CME, and many other actors in the market appear to be connected together and complicit in market manipulation of some sort.
Okay, that goes a little too deep there. So there's some of those guys totally conspiracy. But the Poloniex thing, if Poloniex was involved in this at all, now things have changed since then. They're corporately owned. They have you know, they're being forgiven for everything. They would be the people to chirp. They would be the people to speak about what happened, because they're immune now, and I would think they would want to clear their conscience and everything since they're corporately owned. I'm just throwing that out there. Again, I don't know how deep this runs, and I don't know how important. I know Thomas is worried. I'm not too worried. I'm not worried about this. But again, we'll see if it keeps on coming up in the news. I'll keep on talking about it. There are legitimate reasons to consider it. Definitely. Anyway, did any of you guys have anything else to say about it?
I had one more thing. Don't forget the buyer of Poloniex is launching a competitor to Tether, right? So we don't know. Like, this is going to be a Tether run by Goldman Sachs, and they're just clearing the field. That's what I think. They're just clearing the field of Tether. And that should be the overriding concern, is letting these big banks get in here and control this, because they will manipulate. We know they will manipulate it. Like, I trust Phil Potter at Bitfinex more than I trust these Goldman Sachs types, right? So that's a point to consider.
Yeah, I agree with Ansel. Yeah, they are making another USDC token, the Circle dollar-backed token. They keep going after these dollar-backed tokens to try to understand it from their perspective. I think Goldman Sachs wants to charge fees. So if you put $100 in an account, you could pay $10 fees for 10 months. But if the account's in Bitcoin or altcoins or whatever, it goes up and down. You can't get your fees every month. That's their reason for doing this. But I think the other reason, like Ansel says, is going to be manipulation. And it's going to happen again, even bigger. So yeah.
Well, that's an interesting theory, though, that Tether might be attacked because someone wants to clear the way for a more corporate competitor. The thing is, eventually we're not even going to need these type of coins. This is an important point too. Once it's easy just to get dollars to Bitcoin. I mean, all Tether is just a replacement for to make it easy to buy Bitcoin without dollars. And eventually we'll move on from this, and these stable coins, I think, will be a thing we laugh at, like how we laugh at the intranet.
It's funny, though, because if you think about a decentralized exchange, right now you can really only change crypto to crypto, Bitcoin for Litecoin or whatever. You can't really get USD. So if you were trying to hedge and you didn't want to touch Coinbase and you didn't want to just get dollars and do that hassle, if there was a coin like Tether that worked, and if there was a decentralized exchange that worked really good, and BISC is getting better and things, it would be perfect for the decentralized exchange, because you could move your money into fiat and you could have, a percentage of your money in fiat. So it would serve a purpose there, but that's not what I think they're building it for.
Okay. All right. Jorge, I know I left you out. I don't know if you know about the Tether stuff. If you wanted to say anything about it, or
A little bit, not much. I try to follow in order to be knowledgeable about the whole space, but we are not. Tether is not an issue here among Argentinians right now.
Again, I think that's a very important. Like we're saying, Argentina is the first world, but this is one of those cases like first world problems. I mean, they got better things to worry about. Again,
I wanted to ask you, how can Tether hurt Bitcoin? I mean, Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. It's decentralized. You can co-opt it, whether Tether is centralized and it can be manipulated. So I think that given the choice, I mean, it's very easy. I don't want Tether. I want Bitcoin.
Well,
how can it be a threat to Bitcoin?
I mean, that is the question. It's because of what it possibly pumped up the price of Bitcoin, and that it's a tool of pumping up prices, and that all of cryptocurrencies valuations are fake, and that then people won't want to be involved with cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
So the dollar value of Bitcoin will go down, but we value our wealth in Bitcoin, and it's a tool for people in different countries to get their money, to make sure their money isn't unconfiscatable. It does, Tether pumping the price of Bitcoin doesn't negate the fact that Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. And I think eventually everyone will calm down and realize that. But again, dollar value of Bitcoin is something that is important to a lot of very wealthy people and any person. People are used to valuing their wealth in dollars, just like in Argentina. So I mean, that's why. Do you guys have anything to add?
I just worry about these greedy people who are willing to break the law, and that Bitcoin's a great market, and one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and if you hold it, you hold it. And all this manipulation, all this price fixing, like Adam said, it hurts our ability to know the price of Bitcoin. I used to think the price of Bitcoin was 20K or 10K or whatever. Now I just don't know. And I just don't have as much information as I used to have because this has undercut my ability to believe in the information that I was given.
You know what, Thomas? You brought up with Mt. Gox and how that you thought back then, oh, it's worth 1,100, but then you found out that it was fake. But I think and if this is similar, if it was pumped, and I'm not saying this, if it was pumped to 20,000 because of crazy manipulation, then we've just gone through the cycle again. We've seen, and what I always say is that cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, it's all cyclical. So I have no doubt that even though it reached 20,000 in a fake way, and I'm not saying it did, that it will return because it did it before. It was able to eclipse a fake high before. And that wasn't because of it. I mean, it didn't get to $3,000 because of manipulation. I don't think anyone's saying that. But I just think if people have a long-term view of this, a long-term picture, if this is very similar to that, and even if it's bigger, it's still psychologically, it was at 20,000 once. It'll get, you just have to be patient. And I know, Thomas, you said, well, is it going to be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Well, who knows? That's up for discussion, definitely. But I did want to say that we can look at this as a cyclical type of thing also, and restore our confidence that yes, it shall return.
Definitely agree with that. And I'd say if we're in a battle, and this is a battle to make Bitcoin the #1 currency, and it's a battle against all the other currencies and everything, you didn't think it was going to be easy, did you? You didn't think it was just going to go straight up the whole way. I mean, there are bumps in this road, and this feels like a bump.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way of saying it. It's not going to be easy. If this is a threat, then it's a threat. But they'll be up there. As I say, there are going to be days it goes down by 1,000. There are going to be days it goes up by 1,000. It's not going to be very. You got to have a strong hand, people. Pound that like button. All right. Well, unless Ansel has anything to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Tether was useful for arbitrage, right? So it did help the price somewhat when it's stable and there's no FUD around it. It can actually help the price. I think, like, what was the total market cap of Tether? Like 5 billion or something like that. What's the total market cap of these altcoins? I mean, Ethereum alone is 50 billion and it's worthless. So the main source of the inflation or the manipulation isn't from Tether. It's driven by the inflation of the altcoins. I mean, look at the dominance index. It's like 40%, right? So that means 60% of this market is pure inflationary effect on the price of Bitcoin. So all of these people that are really worried about Tether, it's because they don't understand that altcoins are shit, that altcoins are worthless. All they are is a source of inflation. They keep coming out with new altcoins or new ICOs every day, putting more fake value into the system to pump up the price. So I think there could be something to say about Tether negatively, but that we're looking at it from the wrong angle. Tether's not the worst part. It's the altcoins and Ethereum and Ripple and all those. That's the source of the inflation.
All right. Let's
Ansel, can I ask you a question? When after having said that, I'm talking to Ansel. When are we going to start seeing the altcoins being weeded out? After I agree with Ansel what he just said, but are they going to be weeded out at some point, and when?
Well, there's a saying that blockchains can't die, right? They always they'll just one person will keep them alive, but they can be delisted from exchanges. And there's these narratives that you see or memes in the marketplace, smart contract platform, unstoppable code that died pretty quick, right? With the DAO. So we'll see this smart contract platform meme kind of die out. And I don't think their market caps will ever go to zero, but they might be in the, double-digit millions instead of double-digit billions. And we'll just get the next narrative. The one I see coming up is securities tokens, right? So everyone's kind of in a race to be the security exchange, the security token exchange, and that will be a next source of inflation for the price. But I don't think that they will ever die completely, but they will be very insignificant.
I think we're on the verge of a system where there's going to be some big survivors. There'll be a top tier, but there'll be a bunch of little ones that people just day trade and people flip around. I don't know. I'm thinking after the next halving, but probably toward 2024. I mean, the whole environment changes so fast. I mean, I remember before, whenever it was as late as 2015, it was only like Feathercoin and whatever was on BTC-E. It changes so fast. So it's hard to predict. But I think some of these little ones are going to be left in the dust. I mean, it depends on how big the ICO craze remains. And now, it seems like it could grow larger now, since people are very enthusiastic about it. Thomas, do you have any thoughts on that, on this, what Jorge said?
Sure. I just think it's funny how much things have changed over the past 3 to 5 years. Like Adam said, Tethercoin, Earthcoin, TerraCoin, PrimeCoin, 42 coin, one coin that was a single coin with a number 1. All of these have come and gone. And everyone's always like, why do you guys not believe in altcoins? Or I just got a bag of this and I think it's great. And they're excited. And we're like, I've seen it die thousands of times. I'm with Bitcoin. The other ones just live and die. Bitcoin lives forever. So I'm with Bitcoin now. But what's so funny now is that there's so much money in this space. And I don't know whether it was this Tether pump or if it's just other rich people or pump groups or whatever, but there'll be a Feathercoin pump tomorrow. There'll be a TerraCoin pump tomorrow. Like this Ethereum thing, maybe the project dies and everyone stops coding it. But Jimmy and Johnny decided to pump it yesterday and it went up 20%. I mean, everything, I'm afraid it's going to be much, much, much harder. Like Ansel said, blockchains never die. It's much harder for these things to die now that there's so much money and there's just stupid money and they're just pumping things. So I think they're going to stick around.
Well, credit card fraud won't ever go away. And the Nigerian print scams, they'll never go away. Right. So, but they are insignificant, at least if you're smart and you don't fall for that stuff. So yeah, Ethereum could live on for, 20, 30 years from now, but not very many people will be scammed as compared to today.
Wow, it's all cyclical, as I say. Okay, so we're going to get to the conclusionary remarks here, but I'm going to ask Thomas one specific thing. Tell us about the Vegas meetup and making Vegas the crypto capital of the United States, or what's going on there? I'm excited.
Well, first I'll talk about the vision, then I'll talk about what we're actually doing so far. And the vision's more exciting, but I visit Vegas like everybody else. I go to a convention or I go to a show or something and I fly out. And it's a fun place to visit. The flights are cheap. They built these huge suburbs around the strip now. There's tons of houses, and they're pretty big and good size, especially compared to a small apartment in San Francisco. So for a variety of reasons, and there's also down at Fremont Street, there's a ton of Bitcoin ATMs. They're everywhere. The D Casino takes Bitcoin. The Golden Gate takes Bitcoin. They have a cafe. They have a Bitcoin ATM. There must be 20 or 30 Bitcoin ATMs in the city. So whereas in San Francisco or Sacramento, there's not really a lot of Bitcoin community or activity, here I really felt that there could be. So I decided to move here, and I started a little Bitcoin meetup. Unfortunately, the main Bitcoin meetup here with 700 people in it, the way that meetup.com works is they charge you to keep a meetup. So if you stop paying, they just kind of orphan your meetup. So the orphaned Bitcoin meetup of old days got taken over by Bcashers. And they're putting up all these demonstrations of how to put your Bcash in a Trezor and all these kind of things. And those get 3 people. And then they have a general Bitcoin meetup and 30 people show up. So I think there is a Bitcoin community here. I'm just trying to reach them. So we have bitcoinlasvegas.org. You can sign up to join the meetup. So far, we've just had some kind of basic hangout meetups at a bar. But eventually, we do hope to get a group of people together a regular time and to hand out flyers to the more than 40 million tourists that come to Las Vegas every year. And normally, you're not that interested in a flyer. You're not that interested in Bitcoin. But if you're in Las Vegas, you're on vacation. So if I come up to you in a nice attitude and I tell you about Bitcoin, and I say, hey, if you come over here and you put 20 bucks in a machine, you get some Bitcoin, you take it home, they might give it a try. It might be a little ride or an experience for them. And they've already lost $20 in a slot machine. They don't care. And if they can just do that, put that 20 bucks in, take it home, take the flyer, which is going to have information on how to get more or whatever, that kind of thing, take it to their buddies in Iowa and say, I bought this crazy Bitcoin in Vegas and, it's $22 and, now it's $15 or now it's $22 or whatever. And they tell their buddy and their buddy says, I want 20 bucks in that too. And now we're spreading the word about Bitcoin. And it doesn't have to be Las Vegas. You can do this at home. You can start your own Bitcoin meetup and you can hand out flyers. And especially if you have a Bitcoin ATM in your town, that's a great way to say, hey, just put 20 bucks in. Don't invest too much. Don't risk it or anything, but try out this new currency. It's like email. You don't have anybody to email right now, but maybe someday you will. And so we're just trying to spread the word.
That's a great rationale for having it in Vegas too. I like that because people are just tossing money all around. Yeah, why not hit the tourists that are there? This is a very good idea. So yeah.
And also, if you want to visit, if you want to come on down to Vegas, we're going to have hopefully if we get someone to visit on a cheap flight, we'll have a speaker. We'll have them back here to the studios. We'll do an interview, and then you can enjoy Vegas. You can do whatever you like to do here. So
yeah, I will say this: there are many cheap flights there. People, many Spirit Airlines goes there. If you want to just go for a weekend on Spirit, just don't bring any bags with you, and you get real cheap. And and this makes me want to return. Vegas is very hot, so I've said bad things about Vegas before, but this kind of thing makes me want to return to Vegas definitely. So I wish you all the luck, and let's keep and hopefully have maybe there'll be a big real Bitcoin event there, like a convention or whatever, the Thomas Hunt World Crypto Network, cool people, elite Bitcoin event. No ICOs allowed.
And I hate to spoil it, but we're definitely working on that idea, and we'd like to do a community-based convention, not about the big names or the big people, but just all the normal people. If you like Bitcoin, if you watch these shows, and I bet a lot of you are like, I talk back to the screen. I yell at you all the time. And if you want to come, yell at me in person or yell at Ansel in person, I think it'd be super fun to have that kind of a community-based convention. It's not about ICOs or big money or the stock people, and they can come too and hang out, but it's about the community. So yeah. I would love to see that.
You're on the right track there. Awesome. 20%.
Call it the chat box convention.
Oh no! But then you get guys cursing wildly with saying conspiracy theory. No. Chat box. I don't know if that's a good day because encourage behavior that is just out of this world. Oh God. Anyway, Jorge, what are your conclusionary thoughts down in snowy Argentina?
Well, I just want to say that my feeling is that we're despite all the things I tried to explain to you guys, and I hope you sort of were able to understand the complex situation here in Argentina, I personally do not see that we're going into any type of hyperinflation anytime soon, which is good news. And I think the people in government right now are getting it. They need to shrink the government to lower taxes. It's the only way out. Otherwise, the country is not viable. I think they got the message. So, in that regard, I'm optimistic.
One quick final question: when is the next presidential election now?
In 2019.
Oof! Oh my God! I hope they don't elect the opposition. Okay, that's a whole nother show. All right, Ansel, what is your because it's all out the window if the opposition gets elected. Anyway, Ansel, what are your conclusionary thoughts? Anything that we left out? Anything you want to bring up?
I just want to say it's an honor to be on your show, Adam. Thank you. I try to make it on as much as I can. You ask me, every couple months you ask me, and I can't make it, but it's an honor to be on here with your guests. You always have really good shows, really good guests on, and I love your lines, strong hands, 2020, all that stuff, because that's super, super important. The whole hold mentality is really important, and it was an honor to be on with Jorge and Thomas. Thank you.
Dude, it's an honor and a privilege to have all of you guys on. It's a great show. The people out there who understand what this is about, I try to bring you different perspectives, different news. No one's talking about Argentina now, and in the end, it really blends in with everything, because you see that first half hour of the show. This is why people need Bitcoin. The people who say there's no use case, watch that first half hour. So real quick, my final thought is, speaking of events, great time here in Florida. I'm going to be in Puerto Rico starting the 20th to the 28th. And very important, BitcoinRodeo.com. That is in Calgary on the 9th and 10th of July, BitcoinRodeo.com. Check it out. BTC Benny, Vortex will be there. Some other dudes, all sorts of dudes that you guys know will be there. Okay, so thanks a lot, everyone. I do this show, This Week in Bitcoin, every Friday. We'll have some amazing guests on next Friday. Tomorrow is the Beyond Bitcoin show. That's every Saturday. And all the other days of the week is just the regular one Bitcoin show, but you never know what's going to happen. There is a new show posted here every day, at least one. And, of course, you can hear these on the World Crypto Network podcast. You can hear Thomas's shows on there, actually, also, and Ansel's shows on the World Crypto Network podcast that the great Corey puts together. So check out that. That's linked to below. These guys are linked to below. I'm Adam Meister, the BitcoinMeister, the DisruptMeister. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video, pound that like button. See you later. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.